We're going to continue our discussion about this tragic school shooting in Santa Fe, Texas. Erich Pratt, Gun Owners of America Executive Director, is on the line now to discuss this all, talk about the calls for gun control, as well as, what could actually be done to stop this stuff from happening in the future. Erich, welcome to Breitbart News Sunday.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
All right. So it's happened again. We have everyone calling for gun control. A horrible tragedy. I mean, even Texas Governor Abbott now is calling for new gun control restrictions. It happens every time. But walk me through why this wouldn't do anything. I mean, we have this conversation all the time. But again, why are none of of the left's ideas going to work?
Yeah, they don't work. And this, you're right, this has been the mantra of the anti-gun left. Here we go again. We need restrictions. But quite frankly, what gun owners should be saying is, here we go again. Your policies are the ones that are failing, because gun control has been an utter failure. It's not working. Even worse, the policies that anti-gun liberals have enacted are actually what's endangering us. I mean, consider this. 98% of the public mass shootings, you go back to 1950, 98% of them occur in gun-free zones, where areas where guns are banned. And this shooting, the Santa Fe shooting, occurred in a gun-free zone. Killers are targeting these areas over and over again. Why? For the same reason that they don't go shoot up gun ranges or police stations, because they want to be the only one with a gun. So what policies would make a difference? Well, really, in every known case where a mass shooting is brought to a screeching halt, it's when good guys with guns show up. I mean, that happened just last week at a school in Illinois. It was a school resource officer. Right after Parkland, there was a shooting at a Maryland school. It was the school resource officer that stopped it. Of course, those stories really don't get the media attention that they should. As you know, we only get the intense media attention when it's a bad case scenario in a gun-free zone where sadly there's not somebody there to put it. This is how Israel brought their school shootings to a screeching halt, Amanda. I mean, they have security guards. They have armed teachers. Their students can go to school in safety. Texas has 172 school districts where teachers carry guns. Now, that sounds like a lot till you realize that's only 17% of the school districts. And in some of those school districts, by the way, they advertise the fact that teachers are armed. They actually put signs up, in front of the schools and on the roads. And there's not been one successful mass shooting at any of those schools where teachers are armed. See, that's the best way to stop a mass shooting, is to prevent it from ever happening.
Right. I mean, in this incident, it looks like maybe there were not as many social media warning signs. Looks like there were a few, but not as many as, of course, in the Parkland school shooting. I mean, do you think, Erich, that is it just the schools are overwhelmed? They can't detect these students that are having troubled thoughts? Or do you think it has more to do with just, I don't know, modern day, the age of modernity? And, maybe is it parents? I mean, what do you think is causing this?
Well, first of all, I don't think we want to live in a Minority Report type society where our government is utilizing a PreCrime Unit to try to detect everybody who might be about to commit a crime. And so they're bugging all of our phones and they're monitoring all of our activity. I mean, we don't want to live in that kind of world.
Right.
But quite frankly, you're right, absolutely right about this kid. He didn't have the warning signs that there was in Parkland, which, by the way, that's a very interesting thing, because the anti-gunners, they want to screen gun owners before they buy firearms. 95% of which, by the way, of the background checks are, sadly, they're stopping people who shouldn't be stopped. But they want to impose all these restrictions on us, background checks, et cetera. But then, as we saw in Parkland, they don't want to arrest the thugs that are causing the problems. So go figure. If they want to coddle the criminals, then of course they're not going to end up on any list where they would be stopped from purchasing a firearm. So there again, it's the liberal policies which are harming us so intensely. So that they want background checks. They want to strengthen the background checks. They say they want these gun confiscation orders, right, where they're going to look for troubled teens and then take away their guns in advance. Well, guess what? None of that would have worked here in Santa Fe because he stole the firearms. He took them from his dad. So no background check in the world would have stopped that. And then as far as looking for, into that crystal ball to determine who are the troubled people, well, he hadn't been suspended, hadn't been kicked out. There were none of those same warning signs. And that's the thing. You're never going to be able to stop and prevent every act of violence. And that's why it is so important. This is what the police say. 81% of police officers say that teachers who want to be armed should be able to be armed. They're the actual first responders.
Yeah, I mean, and, you were talking about those that, we just can't catch that pass these background checks. I mean, look at the Las Vegas shooter. I think a new report this week is saying we may never know his motive for murdering all of those people. So absolutely. So let's talk about now what we can do. You say we don't want to live in a society in which we're having to proactively be monitored for potential crimes, thought crimes that we have in our head. What can we be doing to protect our children?
Well, I think we can learn valuable lessons from Israel, which I mentioned earlier. They have a mix of security guards, and those security guards are monitoring who's coming into the school, but they also have armed teachers, and that's something that we have to varying degrees here in this country in 18 states. And again, there hasn't been a mass shooting in any of the schools where there are armed teachers. It's the same way that we stopped hijackings. We did have armed air marshals, but those, one of the criticisms is that it's easy to detect who the air marshal is, and then you take them out first. So how did we stop any potential problem of future hijackings? We started arming pilots. Now, not every pilot is armed, but there are enough armed pilots that it really makes it very risky now for a potential hijacking. So, see, that's the total game changer. I mean, why do people have guns in their homes? It is for this very potential, this eventuality that if they come under attack, they don't want to wait for 911 because a lot of damage can happen in that time. So that's one of the huge things that's lacking in all these cases where in these gun-free zones, where you end up waiting for the police to arrive, so much damage can occur during that time. So that's one of the things. We have to harden the targets. You have a gun-free zone, it's a soft target. If you harden the target by allowing teachers and principals, et cetera, who want to be armed, have their concealed carry permits, et cetera, that's a huge game changer right there.
Talk to me about, I think it's called the Safe School Act. I think that's something that you guys have been behind.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's H.R. 34 in the Congress. The Safe Schools Act would undo the gun-free zone ban that exists, the federal ban that exists all over the country in our nation's schools. It would just simply repeal that so that teachers would be able to protect the students. Again, then that's a policy which 81% of police officers support, and that's in a massive survey of over 15,000 police officers. I mean, when Gallup and these other organizations do surveys, I mean, they're interviewing anywhere from 200 maybe to a little over 1,000 people. Well, this was 15,000 police officers. 81% of them support arming teachers. The other bill that would be very effective is H.R. 38, which is concealed carry reciprocity. And obviously that name suggests that it allows people from one state to carry into another. But the other thing that it does is it allows those who can carry concealed lawfully to also be able to carry in a school. So there you would have relief as well by allowing teachers who can properly carry can then effectively defend students.
So the last thing I wanted to ask you about is at what point do parents have to take a responsibility here? I mean, this individual, he stole his father's guns. How do we educate responsible gun ownership to parents?
Well, obviously, education is very important, and that's something that I think is the gun community does very well. We teach responsible gun handling and safety and education. But again, you're never going to stop every act of violence. If you were somehow to make and of course, this would be impossible, but make every gun disappear in this country. And boy, that would be a bad thing because guns are actually used far more often to save life. But if you do that, there would still be other killing mechanisms. I mean, remember Nice, France, where 86 people were run over with a truck. I mean, so we still have trucks. We still have box cutters. Remember, box cutters were used to kill over 3,000 people on 9/11. I mean, we live in a dangerous world full of dangerous objects, and the human heart, especially an evil human heart, will always be able to get a hold of, matches and gasoline or truck keys or box cutters or whatever it is to commit atrocities. So ultimately, the ultimate responsibility has to lie on the potential victim. And that's the problem where, again, the anti-gun liberals have created these so-called safe zones, which actually are the killing zones. The gun-free zones are actually the dangerous places where you don't want to be, and that's the thing that we need to change.
Erich, where can people go to learn more about your organization and what you guys are pushing and hoping to accomplish?
Best way is go to our website at gunowners.org. People can also like us on Facebook and Twitter, but if you go to our website, you can sign up for our free email alerts. Again, that's gunowners.org. Sign up for our alerts because the more people we have getting our email alerts and acting on them, the louder voice we have in Congress, and that's making a huge difference in pushing good legislation, but also stopping legislation dead in its tracks that would infringe upon Second Amendment rights.
Erich, thank you so much for joining Breitbart News Sunday. Always love having you on.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thank you, Amanda. Take care.
Thanks. All right. Again, folks, that was Erich Pratt. He's the executive director over at Gun Owners of America. Be sure to check out his stuff and what his organization is doing